Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of this Troy-Bilt 2-stroke leaf blower. In part 1, what we did was, well, the first thing you should actually do, which we did in part 1, is I pulled the muffler off to check the piston and the ring to make sure that they were okay, and they were okay. And then I primed it with some 2-stroke mix through the spark plug hole. We were able to fire it up, and it ran on its own, but it was having a problem throttling up. You know, it probably has a dirty carburetor. I inspected all the fuel lines. They seem to be okay. I do suggest, you know, if you're going to do this, to change the fuel lines, but I'm going to see how the fuel lines are when we take the carburetor off and disassemble it. I can look at the fuel lines better on it. And I'm just going to give it a quick start right now so you can see what it's doing. So let me just move the camera here, and then I'll start it up, and then we'll go ahead and take the carburetor off it. I'll give it some purge. And I'm going to choke it. We'll see if we get it to start. Take the choke off halfway. It doesn't want to throttle up. It's just like carburetor's probably dirty, and then some. I don't know if the diaphragm's going to be good, but we won't be able to tell that until I get the carburetor off. So I got our 4x4 block of wood here. So I'm just going to prop this up here so you can see, and then it'll be easier for me to work on it. And then this choke position here, you have to put it like on number 2, like half choke. This way you can pull this cover off. And I already have the bit ready to take off the cover. So we'll take the cover off. And this has 4 screws holding the cover on. Just 2 on top, and then we got 2 on the bottom here. Okay, then we have 2 Torx here holding the whole carburetor assembly on. And then I'm going to explain to you where this choke lever is. There's a wave washer, and there's like a sleeve. And if you don't put this back together right, then you won't be able to, after you tighten up the carburetor, you're not going to be able to move this. I know that through experience. So what I'm going to do is when I take this off, I'm going to leave the choke assembly onto the plate here. This way there's no mix-ups. I don't know if this is the right size for the... Might be. Yeah, it is. Okay, so we're just going to leave this all together here. It's a good idea to do that if you're doing it, you know, doing your own carburetor cleaning job. Now for the fuel lines. They're still pretty flexible, so I'm gonna, you know, carefully take the fuel lines off the carburetor, and then off camera I'm gonna clean this carburetor off real good before we disassemble it. And what I'm gonna use to clean the outer part of the carburetor, I'll just use some brake clean to clean it. And then the initial cleaning of the inside of the carburetor, we'll be using WD-40. So far, every carburetor that I've cleaned with WD-40, I've had no problems with the rubber seat, because when you use brake clean or carburetor cleaner, it tends to swell up the seat, and then the float doesn't sit right anymore. So I've been having good luck with that. And that I learned from mixed mowers. I always thought the opposite. I thought WD-40 would harm, but it's the complete opposite. And like I said, I haven't had any problems yet. I've done a number of videos, few videos on lawnmower carburetors where I've used the WD-40 and it worked out perfect. I'm going to try to get under this fuel line here with the screwdriver and try to get it off without harming anything. If it does break a little bit, I could always snip a piece off and put it back on. I could have given it a little, maybe I'll give it a little twist with the needle nose here before I go to pull it off. That always helps too. See if I can get up under there. Yeah, I got it. I don't know if I've harmed that. Maybe I'll just snip a little piece off that. And the important thing is you got to remember where your fuel lines go back on. So I know this one here going down into the tank goes underneath here. You can even take a Sharpie and mark it if you think you're going to have any problems to where the fuel lines go back on. So I'm going to give this a little twist over here. Or take pictures, like I always say. Okay, so we got that off. I'm going to unscrew the cap a little bit, and then that relieves the pressure in the tank some, so we don't leak fuel all over the place here. And now I'll, off camera, I'm going to clean off the carburetor, and we'll get to taking it apart. Okay, so we're working on a Walbro carburetor. There's a couple of types that I know of, a Zama and a Walbro, and this is a Walbro. And in part one, I mentioned I don't have the specialty tools to adjust the carburetor air mixture. So what I went and did is I just put a slit right down into the top of the adjuster here, and now I can use this flathead screwdriver to make adjustments, and we're going to be pulling this out. And what I'm going to begin to do is I'm going to screw this in and see how many turns it goes in, and then we'll know where to put the screw back after I'm done cleaning the carburetor. So I'm going to set the carburetor there and make sure you're still in some kind of view. So I'm going to take and I'm going to turn this. We got a half a turn. We got a full turn. We got a half a turn. Two turns. 2 1/4. That seems like a lot. I'll probably set it back in at 2 turns for the initial start, and then we could just make adjustments as we go. As I'm unscrewing this, I'm going to make sure it's clean. Then nothing goes down in the hole here. So I just take a little air. Even if you take these carburetors apart and you say to yourself, oh, it's not dirty, believe me, the littlest speck of dirt that gets in there fouls these carburetors up pretty bad. Any carburetor for that matter. So if it has some symptoms that this blower was doing, you're guaranteed that the carburetor needs to be clean, or it could be the diaphragm's no good too. Okay, so now we'll take our Phillips head screwdriver and we'll pull this apart here where the diaphragm is. And you got 4 screws here. It's pretty soft, the diaphragm, so it looks like the diaphragm's pretty good. Now I'm going to carefully take this off. I will get a single edge blade and try to get this off without harming it. I can't really grab it with my nail here. Okay, I'll be right back. What I noticed that works really well too is this one's really stuck on here pretty bad. So I was able to get the blade. Well, first I took some WD and I just sprayed it around the perimeter of where this diaphragm goes on. And then I was able to get it started here. And I started scraping it off here. And as you keep going, if you spray some WD-40 in between here, it'll help it to come, help it to come off without ripping it. And make sure your blade is facing down away from this so you don't put a hole in the diaphragm as well. You can see how clean this came off. Like if I didn't spray it with the WD and work the diaphragm with the blade, I would have surely have torn it. But it came off really clean, and the diaphragm seems to be all right. So I'll go ahead and pull the rest of this apart and see what we got going in there. I know the screen in here looks pretty clean. Okay, this goes right down to where the needle is. This is the port here. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this out. Now it looks clean, but it doesn't mean that little particles didn't get through into there. And I'm debating whether to take the metering lever and the needle out. That seems to be working good. Sometimes what I do is I'll take like my ice pick and I'll just hold this open and just keep spraying through here and through the other side where the screen is to make sure that that's clean. I'll decide and say if I want to do that. This could have just been a matter of a carburetor adjustment, but like I said, it could still have little particles in there. So I'm going to go ahead and just spray every port I see with WD, and we'll clean it all up, and then we'll put it back together and see if it works. I mean, it's easy enough to take back apart if you have to. So we'll just go ahead and do that for now. Yeah, it was a chainsaw video I made. The chainsaw needed a fuel line. So what I did was I just primed it with some 2-stroke mix. And it started up, but I neglected to take the muffler off to take a look to see what the condition of the piston was. So I went through all the trouble. I changed out the fuel line. I put it back together. It started up and ran for about 7 seconds, right? So I'm going crazy with this thing. So finally I decided to pull the muffler off. Sure enough, piston was really scored real bad. So I did it for nothing. So even if you prime the machine and it starts back up again, still pull the muffler off and check out the ring and the piston, because you never know. right now I'm pressing down on the metering lever. This way the needle is open, so the fluid will pass through. Like I said, not the best way to do this, but so now I'll press the metering lever down again, and I'll spray right above the needle here. It's got good flow. It's just flowing right. It's flowing right through. So I'm not going to bother. And the metering lever appears to be working fine. It doesn't have a stuck. The seat, the rubber seat, is actually on the needle on these. So if I was having a problem with that, it wouldn't be operating properly. So I'm going to go ahead and spray down through the air mixture is here. And every port I see, I'm just going to spray. Some ports you can spray through, some you can't. But just spray through every single one that you see. That's pretty clear. Everything seems to be clear here. So this was all clean too. Everything seems to be pretty clean. So we'll just go ahead and just spray it up anyway here. Let's see here. There's a port here. Very clean. Sometimes I stick a piece of fuel line on here, and then you can stick the straw into the fuel line and clean these out. But I forgot to get a piece of fuel line out here to do this with. So with the way my eyesight is, I'm going to just try to spray a little in there, through there, which is not working out too well, but it's pretty clean anyway. You do it that way through this port. Alright, so I'll begin by putting this back in, this plastic here. The WD's not going to hurt anything, so you can leave it on there. And there's no dirt. There's absolutely no dirt on here anywhere. So okay, so this goes back on here like so. And then it just has one screw in the center here that you'll put back in. So that's on. Okay, so you don't want to put this on upside down. Like this would be upside down. You want to make sure that just the center part here is facing up. That little piece right here is facing up. I think you can only put it on one way anyway. And this has a drain in it. And I remember it was the opposite way of where the mixture adjuster is. So we're going to put that back on just the way that we took it off. And then we'll get our little screws here and screw it back on. And then I can't forget to put the mixture screw back in like I like to do sometimes before we put the carburetor back on. You don't have to go crazy tightening this. Just snug them up really good and that's it. Alright, we get set up to where we could put the carburetor back on it and see how we make out with it. Yes, I almost forgot to put the mixture screw back in. Okay, so when you put the mixture screw back in it, just tighten it down very easily until it just stops. Don't force it in. And then, you know, make your adjustments. And I turn this out 2 full turns. And I'll get ready again, once again, now to get the carburetor back on the machine. Okay, so we're ready to install the carburetor. Now you have the Z-bent here off the throttle cable, so you're going to want to catch that first. And it goes right on this hole, right through this hole right here. Okay, now you want to hook up your fuel lines, and I just use the needle nose pliers for that. I just slip that on there. Make sure it's a tight fit. Yeah, it's pretty good. And then we'll catch our bottom hose here, goes towards the bottom. That was like, you don't really have to mark this because it was self-explanatory what goes on top and what goes on the bottom. I'm just going to take my fingers and stick it on there. You don't need to use the needle nose on that. Okay, so now I'm set up to where I'm just going to put this all together by hand here. And stick your mounting bolts through. Easier said than done, huh? You want to be sure not to cross thread these into that plastic manifold, and make sure your choke lever's like pretty much up here, and then you'll feel where this will go into this lever here, because I told you it was like a bushing. Because if it's not going in straight, then it'll bind up and then the choke won't work. So this seems to be going pretty good here. Make sure your wave washer's lined up and the bushing's lined up in there. They just want to snug the top up just a little bit, make sure the choke's going to work. And it's going to work. So now you can tighten them both up the rest of the way. And then we'll give it one more check here, and it's operating fine. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to start it up without putting this cover on because it won't do any harm. The engine's still being cooled by these covers here, so it's not going to harm anything. But I suggest if you have to take the covers off the side of the engine and whatnot, not to run it too long because it'll overheat the engine. Because these are air-cooled engines. Okay, so that's tight. Everything's tight. The fuel lines are on. I have it set on choke right now. Maybe I'll take it off of choke just to get it running. Maybe not. I don't know. So we'll give it a couple of purges here. And then you can feel the pressure. As soon as you start feeling the pressure, you know it's starting to purge. And let me make sure you're still in sight. Yep, you're in sight. So do we want to start it on choke or not choke? We'll try it without choke first. Now we'll choke it. I'll give it about half choke now. can't get on this adjuster screw too good either. That's why it's nice if you have the tool to adjust the carburetor with. It kind of lost its prime. Because I'm pushing the bulb in and it's... Oh, could this be out of gas? What an idiot. What an idiot. Let me put some fuel in it and I'll get right back to you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the biggest problem it had is I had no gas in it. Anyway, I put some gas in it. I only had to tweak the carburetor just a little bit. And it seems to be running good, so I'll start it up now and you can check it out for yourself. And that's it. And that'll be it for this. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put the cover back on because that's what houses the air filter. So once I put that back on, you always want to make your final adjustment with the air filter installed. And I hope somebody got something out of this. It doesn't happen this way all the time. Sometimes you have to buy a diaphragm. I think the carburetors are about 15 bucks for these, or 10 bucks or whatever they are. But I always like the challenge of trying to fix something myself and use what we have, you know, the original part, and try to fix it that way rather than just 1, 2, 3, you know, spend 15 bucks, throw the carburetor on and it's done. But all right, thank you for watching the series, and I'll leave a link to part 1 also so you could see what was going on when I had the muffler off. I even showed, you know, the condition of the piston. So just remember, the first thing in your head is if you find these things or you buy them at the flea market or however you buy them, first rule is to take the muffler off, inspect the piston and ring before you go crazy. Don't do what I did on that chainsaw video I did. I don't know what I was thinking that day. I wasn't thinking that day, whatever. And I want to thank everybody for watching and stay safe. I'll see you guys on the next one.